The markets have seen a very bad year in 2024 for the altcoins, as Ethereum has dropped by 35% against Bitcoin, causing the altcoins to drop constantly over the year. So the question is, what's 2025 going to do for Ethereum? Let's discuss. As you know, I'm quite a big bull on Ethereum, and I've actually been going all into altcoins and mostly into the Ethereum ecosystem. And I actually predicted what was ready to take place, which is that I'm going to be doing it too early, which was during the summer, and my portfolio went down substantially. But some altcoins have been making some gains for me, so it's not as bad as you think it could be, but Ethereum has been underperforming significantly. And we can see it in the data. Ethereum has been the terrible one for 2024, in the sense that it has seen a 46% return against USDT, but it went down by 35% against Bitcoin. And if we reference that towards other altcoins, we can see that Solana had an 86% return in 2024 against the US dollar and only minus 15% against Bitcoin. And you might not say that it actually went down against Bitcoin, but the actual return for Solana was made in 2023. 2024, it had a negative return. In 2024, we saw that SUI had a 430% return against the dollar and a 140% return against Bitcoin. So yes, Ethereum has seen a relatively bad year, and the chart that we have here, which is Solana versus ETH, shows what Ethereum has been performing or has been doing. We have seen a 1000% run on Solana versus ETH since May 2023, but the times are changing, as we have also seen that Solana versus ETH has peaked in the previous months, and we already have seen a correction of more than 30% since that recent high, indicating that money might be reversing from Solana into the Ether ecosystem. The question is though, what is the reason that Ethereum has been underperforming? As in the previous cycles, we have seen that Ethereum is the actual core pillar of an alt season or for momentum for the altcoins. Well, the first argument is the fact that macroeconomic climate isn't favoring going more into the risk curve, which is that if the yields are very high and the dollar is very strong, there's no interest into the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem. And as we can see, the yields have been going up by 30% since the beginning of September, indicating that government bonds yield a higher return than going into stablecoin staking on ETH, for instance. As you know, Ethereum is DeFi, and when there is high yields, there is a less interest into DeFi. And when there's less interest into DeFi, there are lower returns into DeFi, as there is the demand and supply case. And that pendulum that swings both ways. So if the yields go down, the yields go down on the government bonds, the interest rates on DeFi and ETH go up, and there is more interest into ETH. The good part, though, is that the TVL has been running up substantially. So what we see in the data is that we have been breaking this cycle's high already, while the price of Ethereum hasn't been breaking through it yet. And we can see that we're getting into the stages of the 2021 highs on TVL, which shows that there is a certain interest into DeFi, and it starts to accelerate, the trend is upwards, and that there is an actual gap between price and fundamental aspect of Ethereum, in the sense that fundamentally the TVL is crawling up, but price is lagging behind, and that's what we see quite often. The second thing is that Ethereum hasn't seen any hype. There has been many fundamental upgrades taking place and many complex changes taking place in 2024, but it didn't result into immediate effects in the price. We have seen that it went from Gurley to Holesky, which is a change in the terms of the testnet that they use. We've seen the Denkun upgrade, which is one of the biggest upgrades that we have seen in terms of scalability. We've seen that blobs, in terms of proto sharding, have been getting into Ethereum, in which also scalability has been a big aspect of what has been taking place within Ether, one of the biggest issues that Ether had in the previous years. And we've seen that there were big steps going forward in terms of account abstraction, through which we can all start using Ethereum and the transaction costs go down. This is from AIP 7702. The next upgrade to come is Spectra, which is expected to happen in Q1 of 2025. And this is all very complex and technical, and retail end users don't really see any result out of this, except for the fact that you can see that the transaction fees have been going down. However, when we talk about transaction fees, we can see that Solana has lower transaction fees, so that's why the hype shifted towards Solana mostly. So the costs have been lowered on Ether. Layer 2s are doing great. Optimism, Arbitrum, they are all doing great, but there is still no hype. While Solana has been seeing the hype with Deepin. Solana at the beginning of the year, Solana has been seeing interest in terms of the meme coin Fiesta, and there has been a rumor where they were expecting to be doing better than Ethereum, which is something that we have been seeing going over the cycles as well. Then finally, the Ethereum ETF wasn't an actual success in the sense that we've seen an outflow at the beginning and not really that much interest into the Ethereum ETF in general compared to Bitcoin. And that fueled the negative sentiment surrounding ETH, and that has resulted into the current price action. But in the last weeks of 2024, we've seen that more than $1 billion has been coming into Ethereum. So the question is, what's next? Now, the question is, what is Ethereum going to do in 2025? As in the previous 3 years, we have seen a downwards trend against Bitcoin. And the question is, when is that going to reverse, and how is that going to reverse to actually get more momentum into the altcoins? And right now, with the Ethereum ETF, we see that there is a substantial amount of inflow, and that has a marginal bigger impact into the price of Ethereum. That is one idea behind what Ethereum could be doing. And I would like to go through all the data to actually make that statement real, which is, if you look at Ethereum, the current market capitalization of Ether is 420 billion, while Bitcoin is currently at 2 trillion, which means that Bitcoin is 5 times larger than Ethereum is at this point. And Ethereum has something unique, which is it's proof of stake, while Bitcoin is proof of work. Ethereum has 33 million ETH staked at this point, which is approximately 120 billion in US dollar value. That is close to 30% of the entire supply being locked. So that is not circulating. It actually takes a lot of time to get it out of there, which means that in order to get a price move taking place, the market cap is even reduced by the amount of staked ETH. Then, on top of that, we've got a bunch of Ether that's being used by dApps for gas fees, transactions, building, or just storing into treasuries to fuel or to continue building those projects that are building on top of ETH. Then, something more technical, which is the amount of issuance of ETH versus Bitcoin per year. If we look at it on a daily perspective, then we can see that since January 2024, only 280,000 ETH have been added onto the supply of Ethereum, and the total supply of ETH is around 120 million, which means that there is a 0.23% inflation in 2024. And the thing is that the more ETH is being used, then it might even become deflationary, increasing the potential price of Ethereum, and that's the pendulum that swings within Ethereum as well. If we combine that or compare that towards Bitcoin, we can see that the Bitcoin inflation is 1.70%, which equals 900 Bitcoin per day, which equals 85 million per day in US dollar value. When we talk about Ether, 0.23%, which is 767 ETH per day, which is 2.7 million per day, which means that if there is an influx in the Ethereum ETF, then the impact is going to be substantially higher in ETH than in Bitcoin. And the Ethereum ETF inflow continues to be super positive, as it is. Ethereum is the most compliant with regulations. Ethereum is the most secure and scalable blockchain. So in the last month of 2024, we've seen 2 billion in inflow in Ethereum. And you can see that with the inflation and the supply increase on a daily basis, that if that continues to be the case, then the price impact will be substantial. And also, the macroeconomic landscape is likely going to turn, in the sense that the Fed is likely to predict 2 more rate cuts to be taking place in 2025, which means that there's more interest going into ETH. But they also expect that the unemployment rate is almost not going to change, and GDP is going to be positive or stays positive. The moment that it goes out of balance and the unemployment rate starts to rally up, or the GDP becomes negative, those are going to be triggers for 2025 that the yields are likely going to drop, and those are going to be triggers where Ethereum is likely going to do well. And then on top of that, we know that in 2017 and in 2021, Ethereum has been outperforming Bitcoin significantly, and that is due to the 4-year cycle and the heaviness of going off or going heavier into the risk curve, which I think is going to be repeating itself as history repeats itself. Let's discuss the TA. As I mentioned, in the previous cycles, there's 1 year that Ethereum was outperforming Bitcoin, which was 2017, 2021, and hopefully as well 2025. So it's time to discuss the technical analysis, which in this case, you can see that I'm not lying. In the actual case of December 2016, we marked the low of the price action of Ethereum against Bitcoin, resulting into a 2,000% increase against Bitcoin after that. I do not believe that we're going to have any price-related increase compared to that. It was the first cycle of Ether. You can also see that in 2016, we already had one first initial run. In 2020, December 2020, we had the exact same. And after that, we had a 300 to 400% increase, resulting after that in a bear market of 3 years taking place. And likely we are again in November or December of 2024. We are bottoming out at this point, likely to start having a rally taking place from here. However, the difference that we can see is that in the periods of the previous cycles, so in this case of 2015 and 2016, we already had a run. In 2019, we had a run. And in 2022 to 2024, we didn't really have any upwards run taking place. The markets were down only, marking the longest bear market that we had. Now, if we start looking at what we can predict, then we could be looking at a bear thesis, a neutral thesis, and we can look at a bull market thesis. And the first thing is, if we are going back towards the previous high that we had in 2021, that would result into a 175% increase. If we take half of that, we can basically mark that as the bear market thesis, which is an 80% increase. If you add the 80% towards the current price valuation of ETH, you get towards 6,500 to 7,500 for 1 ETH. If you have the neutral thesis of 175%, then if you do that on top of the current price action, you get towards $10,000. Now, if we are going to have some momentum that we break that high and get a 300% run, which is close towards the high that we have seen in 2017, then that would indicate that we're going to have a 4x of the current price, which equals $12,500 to $15,000. And that is just Ethereum alone. If you have these runs and you compare that towards Bitcoin going up again, then you need to multiply it even more. And that's where the actual gains start to kick in. So if you have, let's say, $6,500, 10K and 15K, and if Bitcoin is going to have a 50% run to 150K from here, you get to $10,000, you get to $15,000, and you get to 22K. And the higher Bitcoin goes, the higher Ether could go, especially if Ethereum gets hype and it becomes deflationary and Ethereum ETF starts to kick in. So Ethereum is currently at the lowest valuation in this cycle, has seen a 3-year bear market, and it's not really weird to be looking at a potential case of a $20,000 Ethereum, that if Ethereum goes or triples against Bitcoin, then you're already at $10,500 to $12,000. And it's also not weird to expect Bitcoin to double from here. So then you get towards the thesis of 20K per ETH. And if that is your thesis, then everything on top of Ethereum, which are optimism, for instance, is very likely to outperform Ethereum in the sense that it can yield an even higher return. And as we can see here, optimism against Ether is currently also at a cycle low, where in the previous runs in December 2023, we have seen a rally taking place of 2x. We have seen another one in December 2022. And it's very likely to expect that this is going to have another run taking place. And that's why if you're looking to get more return, if you're investing into the Ether ecosystem, you need to, if these are there, you need to be looking at charts like optimism versus ETH, which indicates how much of an upside that can be made. And in this case, we are likely going to be back towards these highs, resulting into a 3x against ETH. And then you can do the math again when it comes to how high optimism can go. The same can be said for Chainlink against Ether. It's very clear that Chainlink against Ether has seen a disastrous bear market, as we had this peak here at 46,000 in August of 2020, and now we're consolidating at 3,000, and we start to make higher highs and higher lows in the sense that we're making an actual uptrend, indicating that there's a lot of upside to be made, and that it's not weird for Chainlink against Ether to do a 3 to 5x, and then you can start calculating it again. You understand the point, and especially if we're looking at the DeFi ecosystem, the same can be said for things like synthetics, which is still making new lows while DeFi is already waking up. And finally, if we look at Total Tree versus Bitcoin, we can see that we have the biggest and longest bullish divergence taking place, where the altcoins are valued against Bitcoin, which indicates that the reversal is already taking place and that we're just at the start of the actual bull cycle, where expecting Ethereum to outperform and yielding a potential return of 20K or 10K to 20K is not weird to expect. Thank you very much for watching to this update. Make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you again on Thursday for a new one. Ciao!